If you are new to the saltwater hobby, or if you're just a seasoned aquarist that likes to listen to other people's experiences and stories, then this video is for you. My name is Jordan and this is GADH Aquatics, where we pretty much try to do anything aquariums in my apartment while I'm in college. I was on Facebook scrolling because, well, I've been sick and I was bored. So I was on Facebook just looking at old photos and I came across this photo. And I know it's kind of hard to tell, but it's some GSP that I had from back in like 7th or 8th grade. What I realized from that, which is kind of cool, is that I've been in the reefing hobby for just over a little of a decade, which is kind of crazy to think because I'm only 24, so that's like a pretty good chunk of my life. I found that photo, thought it was kind of cool that I've been in the hobby for so long, and I thought it would be interesting to give you guys a few tips or things that I would have liked to know before I got into the reefing hobby. So I've got about 4 different topics or ideas that I want to share with you guys that I think would have made me a better aquarist, or at least a little bit more aware aquarist, if that makes any sense, before I got into the hobby. So I've got 4 things down here. We're gonna get into the first one right now. So the first one is gonna be very obvious because I know you guys have heard it in other videos, is to get the largest aquarium possible for the space that you have. Now, depending on your success with corals and things like that, they may grow at different rates, but for me with the softies, I found that having even just a 20-gallon with a few different leathers in it, I outgrew that tank quite quickly, especially jumping into other different kinds of corals and turning it into a mixed reef. I found that space was very limited in a 20-gallon. So I think starting out, it would be good to try to get yourself maybe a 30 or even a 40-gallon. I know that might seem a little bit daunting, a 3-foot tank versus something like a 20 or a 24-inch tank. But that extra space does help a lot. I get if the space that you have can only fit a 10 or 20-gallon aquarium, then you got to do what you got to do. Now, the second topic that I have for you guys is something that I kind of recently, I guess, discovered or learned or figured out, is to aim for species-specific tanks. And I don't mean trying to set up like a clownfish harem or a nem-only tank where you have to have just one type of animal or coral in that aquarium. If you're gonna set up a tank that's, I don't know, maybe under 50 gallons, you can kind of be the judge of that number. But for me, with the 38-gallon, for example, I had it set up as a mixed reef in the beginning, and I ran into some issues with that. If you've got a nano tank set up, or if you've got your 40-gallon set up, to try and aim for maybe just softy corals or just LPS. And if you're a beginner, you're probably not going to jump into an SPS dominated aquarium, but you get my point. Try to aim for corals that are all going to have somewhat of the same requirements. So for example, in this aquarium, I've got mostly softies in here with the exception of 2 LPS on the back wall. I've got a lot of toadstools and a lot of leathers and some like green star polyps and a couple other things. But in general, all of these corals like moderate flow, moderate light, and they don't take a lot of requirement. Now, in the beginning, this tank was set up as a mixed reef, so I had some SPS in here and I had a little bit more LPS in here. So to dial in the flow and to dial in the lighting and keep up with the supplement demands, etc., it is a lot more work, and it's gonna be a lot more work for a beginner because you're gonna have to deal with that along with learning how to maintain a reef tank and all the ins and outs of it. But for an experienced aquarist, someone in the reefing hobby, that's gonna be the fun challenge or the fun part of doing a mixed reef, keeping all those different types of corals together and thriving. So I would recommend trying to stick to a species specific type of tank and keeping only softies or only LPS or just a little bit of softies and LPS or just one or the other, you know. So that's my second tip. Now, the third tip that I have for you guys is to find out kind of what you like and wait for it. Now, what I mean by that is if there's a coral or a fish or an invert that you've seen from a video or a magazine or something and you've wanted it in your tank, and of course, you know, the husbandry and the size of your aquarium meets up for the requirements of that animal, then I would wait for it. Don't try to pull the trigger just to fill up a space in your tank. And this is coming from a personal experience. So this is something that I've always kind of struggled with in the saltwater hobby, is trying to fill up the tank as quick as possible to make it look as finished as quick as possible, if that makes sense. So I would have a tank that was bare, and then I would walk into a reef store and I would see just like a huge clump of Kenya tree or a huge clump of GSP, you know, something that's a intermediate coral, something that's not very sought after. You may think that Kenya tree is the most beautiful coral in the world, and that is completely true if that's your opinion. But anyways, I would go into a store and I would try to pick up just the biggest colony of whatever for the cheapest as possible, and eventually it would take over and it would just be this big clump of like tan whatever. And over the years you kind of come to learn what you like in the hobby, and you start to see a little bit more attractive corals. My advice is to just kind of figure out what you like, go to different stores and see their display tanks and see what kind of corals are in their aquariums, and I would just wait and pick out and save up for those awesome corals that you like. Now, if you do like Kenya tree genuinely and you really just want a tank full of it, then go for it. I think that's awesome. But for me, I've gone through a batch of different corals, mostly leathers and softies, and I've kind of had to sort out what I really like and what I don't. And there are some spaces in the tank that aren't filled up yet that I could have filled up with some cheaper type of corals, but at this point I've got pretty much what I want, and the space that I have available I'm leaving for those different corals that I haven't got yet or I haven't seen yet. So once I see them and I have the money for them, I'm definitely going to pull the trigger and throw them in the tank. And a couple of those would be like a long polyp toadstool would be awesome. I still would like a couple different variations of toadstools. I'm obsessed with toadstools. So but yeah, there's a couple different corals that I haven't seen in stores yet that I would like to pick up. So I'm leaving it open for when that time comes. With this fourth topic, I'm gonna probably sound a little hypocritical because I'm gonna jump around a little bit. But the point that I would like to make is to pick your battle with prices. I believe Mr. Saltwater Tank TV said this, I think, but there's two types of reefers. There's a gearhead and a reef junkie. I could be completely wrong, but when you get into the hobby, I feel like there's typically those two types of people. The people that try to DIY stuff and get budget builds and budget parts and equipment, and then you've got people that just ball out and spend all the crazy kind of money. I'm somewhere in between, and that's kind of where I'm gonna sound hypocritical, because in some parts I like to be a reef junkie, and in some parts I like to be a gearhead. With my aquarium, I wouldn't say this is the most expensive aquarium, but it's definitely not the cheapest aquarium. It's not like you could just go to Petco and pick up an aquarium. I think with shipping, I spent like around maybe $450, $500 for this tank. So that's where I'm somewhere in the middle with, is like the aquarium. But for example, like my flow pumps, so the pumps inside the aquarium that create the flow, those are Amazon J-Bow pumps. So they cost, I think, like a third of what like a name brand Aqua Illumination Nero 3 would cost. Now my lights, for example, with the exception of the one in the middle, the new Sight K7 Pro, that was a sponsored light, so it was given to me. But the Aquanites are Amazon lights as well, so those are like $80 on Amazon right now, but I think at the time when I bought them they were like $68, so stupid cheap for those. I just use those as supplemental cover lighting in addition to my K7, but I have grown coral under those. So things like that I tend to like kind of cheap out on, just because it's really hard to go into a store and spend $500-$600 on a single light with a mount and the controller, whereas you can spend a third of that and have 3 different kinds of lights over your tanks. I understand if you are like a die-hard Radion person, a die-hard Kessel person, but for me this is kind of just my thought process on at least the lighting for the tank. In some ways I would say I'm a little bit of a gearhead as well, because with these pieces of equipment being so cheap, I'm able to kind of change them out and test different products as well. Now if I had more money I would be able to do that with the higher end products, but I'm not able to do that. So It's fun to just try out the cheaper items and play around with them and really see what they can do before going out and spending a crazy amount of money on the actual name brand items. Now, those are the tips that I have for you guys. You could take them with a grain of salt. And is that the saying? Take them with a grain of salt or take them with a grain of sand? I don't know what the saying is. Wow. I'm tired. I've been sick, like I said, so I'm just trying to make another video for you guys. Been posting about every Wednesday, usually post Wednesday at 12:30 p.m. So if you guys want to come back and check it out, that is when I post. But yeah, if you guys did find any help from this video, let me know in the comments down below. It's awesome that I've been in this hobby for 11 years now, and I don't see myself ever getting out. I absolutely love looking at my tanks every single day and working on them every single week. If you guys have any questions, let me know in the comments down below. Again, we'll be posting next Wednesday. And if you guys want to check out my other platforms, link is in the description below. So with all that being said, I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace out.